Hello, my name is Ethan Gale, and I learned long ago to remain silent during applause. Tonight, under the chandeliers of a hotel on Fifth Avenue, I was applauded, Philanthropist of the Year, FinTech Visionary, the nugget who gave small traders a voice. I stood with a glittering statuette in my hand and thought only of the message on my phone, an unknown number, a single sentence. You know who owns the first line of your empire. The cameras smiled nearby, the champagne fizzed, but in the invisible window of my mind, an old code editor with watermarks of the touch of another life was already opening. Mr. Gale, a word to the press, they shouted. Leave a comment about the new fund for veterans, the host added. I nodded, but my throat tightened. First line, the same one I had typed in my Stanford dorm on someone else's laptop. At the time it had seemed like a small thing, a friendly experiment. The guy's name was Lucas Sparrow. We were two hungry eagles. He was a restless mathematician with eyes full of sky. I was a compulsive engineer with hands that trembled as the light of the monitor merged with my heartbeat at night. We swore to fly together. We did, until he unbuckled his seatbelt before I did. After the scene, I ran to the office corridor. The phone vibrated again. If you want to know the truth, come to the coffee shop on Bleecker Street at 2:13. Bring the key to the data center. No security. Impossible, impolite minute precision. I would have laughed if I hadn't been shaking. The key to the data center is a thin strip of metal. Security hands don't like it when the CEO carries it. I carried it. Like a talisman, like an anchor, like proof to myself that I could still see where the numbers were coming from. Ethan, are you okay? My wife Claire appeared, elegant and clear as silver. Yes, just work. Are you running off into the night again? For an hour. I'll be back before dawn. She took a breath, was about to say stay, but only touched my cheek. I stepped out into cold New York, where the steam from the manholes resembled a cloud descending to ground level. At 2:13, the door to the coffee shop rang. A woman with short, dark bangs sat at a table, her fingers inky, like those of journalists of past centuries. My name is Raina. I know that Luca is alive. And I know who encoded that first line. She placed the flash drive on the table. It has everything you need to break your applause and collect the true price of your silence. But there is another way. Why other? Because either the truth will crush you, or you will light it yourself. And then, perhaps, it will only burn the skin, not the bones. I looked at the flash drive like a match over a canister. For the first time in years, money became lighter than the gaze of a stranger. I took it, and I realized my usual course of life had just burned down. In the morning I called Lucas, no longer Sparrow, now the CEO of the strategy department, a man in an impeccable suit with a smile that cut like a blade. He brought an espresso and a folder with our foundation's logo, painting the gastronomy of generosity for the cameras. I turned off the recording. I put the flash drive on the table. The room became quiet, as before the inauguration of the unknown. What is this? His eyebrows did not move. You say it. Not our format for jokes, Ethan. The first line. Remember? Luca leaned back, swallowing time in small sips. This is the past. We chose the future. We? Were you? Do you want to remain a hero in a world where heroes are chosen by algorithms? Accept the game. It's yours. 2 hours later, the media exploded. An anonymous account leaked documents. Our app's express lanes bypassed users' small orders, pushing them to premium passes, voluntary forced, like a loan officer's smile. Startups called it flow optimization, but headlines made it vulnerability manipulation. A senator on the Banking Services Committee asked publicly, why did Hail FinTech hide its real fees? The stock plummeted like an elevator without a cable. Partners turned away as if I were contagious. That evening, Claire set a bowl of soup in front of me, reflecting my haggard face. You approved of that? I was silent. The pause crunched. I signed the release. I saw as if I hadn't seen. I pretended it was useful. You called lying a service, she said flatly. You always went out at night, Ethan. But this time, night had entered our house. My lawyer advised, deny it. Talk about product bugs. About a separate team. You're a visionary, not an engineer. The board demanded, uncheck the box for liability. Bring us the culprit. And Luca, as always, promptly put the risk manager's name on the table and looked offendedly honest. I saw how easily the bones of the system learn to live without blood. The cameras outside the office flickered like the universe's alarm. Enemies multiplied. Former partners were launching insider articles. A relative in Sacramento suddenly remembered the borrowed 100,000. The government was preparing a hearing. I stood in the middle of it all, like an astronaut who suddenly discovers that the galaxy is not what it seems. Its dark matter is our excuses. The climax came cold. The morning news: Claire Gale files for divorce. Her lawyer quoted, "Irreversible loss of trust. Reputation, fortune, intimacy, all were slipping through her fingers." I signed a waiver. Talk show writers laughed as they read my letters on prime time. Hope vanished like the internet in a storm. I was left with my name and a flash drive that burned my pocket like a confession. "Raynaud," I wrote, "meet me again, and tell me what's really on it." We sat in the empty parking lot, where the Hudson breathed leaden water. Raina lit a cigarette and looked at me as if I had stopped being rich for a moment and become simply guilty. "I worked on the security team," she said, "before Luca made me sign an NDA and kicked me out. You want to know about the first line? It was Luca's prototype. It was pulled from an open repository by a dead student, Garrett Fox. Garrett disappeared in 2012. A month before launch, you signed the intellectual property papers without asking questions. You didn't steal. You closed your eyes. Where's Garrett? I don't know, but I know where his ghost is." She opened her laptop, plugged in the flash drive. The logs of the old server came to life on the screen, the same one that Luca and I had rented for a day or two, and then forgotten about like a school shed. It kept the night mode, ranking users' applications based on their emotional vulnerability. We collected microdata: time of login, swipe speed, number of spelling errors, and the system pushed those who were tired, those who were afraid, those who were alone toward expensive options. The algorithm had a name: Foxfire. I felt a cold sweat break out. I didn't know the language of code, and I had signed its birth. "This is forbidden knowledge, Ethan. Not because it can't be comprehended, but because it's easy to justify," Raina said softly. "Luca sold shares of the fund through affiliated hedge funds and shorted your company on the eve of the leaks. The Senate hearings are a theater where he has already written the finale. But if we get the full Foxfire logs and the hedge agreement letters, the theater will burn down. I'm not for you. I'm for what you called the odds. I do it because I once counted tears as a metric." She pulled out another flash drive. "Here's the key to the Jersey City colocation. In the old rack cabinet are the Foxfire backups and shadow transactions. They're being destroyed tomorrow. Either you go there today and get everything, or this story ends as banally as a bad TV show." I stared out at the river. The darkness didn't feel like emptiness. It felt like possibility. The old slabs were cracking inside me. I can buy more lawyers. I can pay the Senate for consultations. I can point out the scapegoat. I'm Ethan Gale. And then a quiet voice, thinner than the murmur of water. "You are a man who knows. And now you have no right not to know." I nodded. "I will go. But if I disappear," I smiled without humor, "tell Claire that I have finally seen the shore." We broke into the data center in the rain that was hammering the asphalt. The security guard, an old veteran, recognized my face from the news, but let me through with tired sympathy. The closet smelled of dust and the burning of old fans. I inserted the key, removed the side panel, connected the drive. A cursor lit up on the monitor, counting the seconds of my new life. As the progress crawled to 100%, I realized there was no turning back. And somehow that felt like hope. The Senate hearing was the theater where I first chose to play the guilty party, not the god. The cameras hung on every word. The senator asked, "Mr. Gale, did you know about the manipulative protocols?" I should have known, and I should have stopped it. I didn't stop it. Something invisible cracked in the room. My lawyer grimaced as if the truth had bitten him. I continued, "I brought you Foxfire. Here are the logs. Here are the shadow sales. And here are the correspondence between our co-founder, Luke Sparrow, and the hedge funds that had shorted our stock on the eve of the releases. You asked for honesty? Take it, and take my position with it." Luke smiled until the screen behind him flashed with tables that added up to a single sentence. "Transfers, affiliates, synchronous orders," he set his jaw. "Ethan is lying. This is a conspiracy with suspended employees," he said coldly. "Luca," I said, "you always had a knack for making the truth unprofitable. But this time she came with checks." Reina was sitting in the back row, and I saw her shoulders sag a little, as if an invisible stone had finally been lifted off them. The prosecutors stood up. The theater had turned into an autopsy. The media that had called me a predator yesterday had now found another prey. But I knew the victims of Foxfire would not be healed by the arrests alone. What they needed was not spectacular punishment, but the restoration of justice. I will sign a voluntary settlement, I said into the microphone. The sale of my share, the elimination of bonuses, a reparations fund for all the users who were pushed into debt by the system. I won't translate this into insurance mechanisms. I'll pay for it myself. Do you understand that you'll lose everything? The senator asked. I understand that everything is not what I thought it was. After the meeting, Claire caught up with me in the hallway. You did something I never expected, she said. You called a spade a spade. Too late. She was silent for a long second. For us, maybe. For you, finally on time. Luca was arrested a day later. He walked straight, without losing his posture, like a man who still believes that the world is a board where he will always find a way. I walked home in the rain without an umbrella. The empty case from the data center key jingled in my pocket. I gave it to the state investigators. And for the first time in many years, I wasn't afraid without metal in my hand. Fear had somehow evaporated along with the pretended grandeur. Left jobless and penniless, I rented a small office for 1/10 of my previous rent. On the wall is a map of the city, not for expansion but for memory, the areas where users suffered the most from our nudges. I called the new initiative Plainsight. This is not a startup. This is a cooperative of transparent tools, where the code is not hidden behind the rituals of hierarchies. We write slowly. We explain each thread. We participate in meetings with people whose hands are shaking not from caffeine, but from the fear of open balance sheets. Reina accepted my offer to become a co-founder. Claire sent me an unsigned letter with only one sentence. Thank you for the shore. Sometimes I am asked, is it possible to be rich and honest? I answer as someone who has seen the mechanisms of temptation from the inside. Wealth is not the number of zeros, but the number of lines you will not cross, even when no one is looking. Is truth more important than success? There are successes that fall apart at the first encounter with truth, and there are truths that can withstand any success. I chose the latter because I had already lived the former, and it had been empty. One evening, I went out onto the roof of our cheap office. Manhattan glowed like scattered constellations. Messages from beyond the stars. Once it had sounded like a techno manifesto. Now I understood it was simpler. You are not alone in the darkness. Every person you have influenced is looking up at the sky, too. If your path is only comets of loud launches and crashes, they will forget. If your path is small, patient constellations of honest decisions, they will be able to navigate. I will not buy back the past. It is not for sale. But I can pay in advance for the future of others. Perhaps that is the new wealth. I returned to the desk, where letters were waiting for me from those who asked not for cashback but for attention. Explain to me why I spend more in the evening. Help me buy without emotions. I wrote answers, slow and precise, like a code in which each variable is named. Reina stood in the doorway with a thermos of coffee. Are we on time for the union meeting in the Bronx? Yes. And, I smiled. This is the first time we have a deadline that is not about money. The first time? I guess so. We went down the stairs, which creaked with truth. In the hallway hung an old photo of me from a glamour cover. Now the frame had been ripped off. I didn't throw it away. Let it hang as a reminder. Stars have a bright side and a shadow. I choose to walk where I am not the only one who needs the light. And when night falls on the city again, I no longer run away into it. I simply walk alongside. Like a human being. Like someone who has learned to call the first line their own. And not lie at the end.